We can go ahead and get started, Miss Siri.
Great. Um, Hi, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. I'd like to welcome you all to Noir United's Voices of the Diaspora event. And I'd like to thank you all for joining. Just to give you all a bit of context for Noir United and what we have planned for you all today. If you haven't heard of Noir United before, and this is one of your first times joining this event, Noir United is a global development organization, and we are focused on connecting Africa and the diaspora through community-based interventions. We were founded in 2020 during uh, what you would call the global movement for Black lives. And we were inspired by the fact that we were all international development students who were really looking for our place in the international sector and wanting to create more space for young Black um, people of color as well who really wanted to make an impact in their communities and wanted to find a way to do that. And so Noir United is a space for that. We have a strong team of about 15 volunteers who have been working with us diligently for the past couple of years. And in June will be our 5-year anniversary. And so I would like to welcome you all again. Please check out our website. Our team member Gidetti just put that in the group chat. And we also recently opened up membership this year. And so if you'd like to become a Noir United member, please go ahead and sign up on our website. And yeah, I'd like to thank you, and I'll pass it over to Naseem. But before I do that, my name is Miss Siri Adibo Ashford, and I am one of the co-founders and the co-executive director of Noir United International. And I lead this organization with Naseem Ashford, who will be presenting as well.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm Naseem Ashford, one of the co-founders of NoirUnited, and we're really excited to have you all here today, as well as Ambassador Thomas. Over the last year, we've been working to connect the youth in the African diaspora to change makers, leaders, and other people with knowledge and skills in order to drive meaningful change within the international development and global affairs space. And as part of this commitment, the Noir United Voices of the Diaspora series is made to provide a platform for leaders to come and talk to the community, to share their experience, and also give insights on where we should be looking and moving as we continue to grow. Our Voices of the Diaspora series event today features Ambassador Harry K. Thomas. He's a distinguished U.S. diplomat and senior fellow at Yale University School of Jackson of Global Affairs. Ambassador Thomas has a 34-year career in the U.S. Foreign Service, including service as an ambassador to Zimbabwe, the Philippines, and Bangladesh. And to open it up, our first question to you, Ambassador Thomas, is you were raised in New York and you started your career as an urban planner. And today you have a remarkable 34-year career in U.S. Foreign Service. What inspired you to first pursue a career in diplomacy, and how did your identity and background shape that journey?
Well, good evening. Thank you for having me. It is a pleasure to engage with so many young people who are dedicated to uplifting the continent. It's also good to see elder brother, my friend Mel Foote, on, and I'm glad to have him as a wise counsel. Nasiri Nassim Gizetti, you have my admiration for what you're trying to do. My answer is very short, Nassim. I'm very product of public schools and turns out private colleges. But why I joined the Foreign Service? I needed a job. It's simple. I was. It wasn't like anybody else. I didn't know about it. A mentor and friend whom I was working for in the South Bronx of New York uh, told me about the Foreign Service. I ended up taking the exam and passing. But that is why I'm so high on our young people from all kinds of backgrounds joining the Foreign Service, or what was USAID, or the Foreign Commercial Service, the Foreign Agricultural Service, because I didn't know about it and I joined when I was 28. So many people can do this without, and those of you who have a passion for it, clearly the foreign affairs, this is right in your bailiwick.
And I'll pass it to you, Ms. Sari, for the next one.
Thank you, Ambassador Thomas. I think, your experience is definitely a very common one for a lot of Black folks who are interested in international affairs. You kind of stumble into the Foreign Service after learning a bit about it. And I think, you've served as an ambassador in three very different contexts. You were the ambassador to Zimbabwe, to Bangladesh, and the Philippines. And, after doing a little research, I also saw that you were the Director General of the U.S. Foreign Service under George W. Bush and later Obama. And so, could you tell us a bit about what those experiences taught you about diplomacy, about leadership, and cross-cultural engagement?
Well, Ms. Sari, thank you for that. The most important thing in cross-cultural engagement is learning languages, and the Foreign Service teaches us languages as well as how to engage. But you learn much more once you get to a nation, how best to engage with those people. But you have to learn the language, and that helped me in all places that I served our nation. If you're going to understand people, you have to be able to willing to sit down and talk with them. Much easier as a junior officer than ambassador. When you're a junior officer, nobody cares about who you are. They're willing to talk freely. When you're an ambassador, everybody has an agenda. So you have to be very careful in what you say and who you talk to. But when you're a junior and mid-level officer, those are the fun, where you're out in villages, you can go to clubs, you can go to bars, you can go fishing. Ambassador, every room is freshly painted, and so life is very different. But at all levels, I learned patience, humility, that a person in the village can be just as smart as a Rhodes Scholar. It's just a different kind of smart. And the key thing for me in everything was learning to listen. Very hard for Americans who always have a solution to anyone's problem, especially people they don't really know. And it takes time, but listening in villages to what people wanted to help that village, or to a president, what that person wanted, was key to success. And as a leader, you have to know all of the people that work for you in your embassy, not just the Americans, but the foreigners, our local staff also, their families, what makes them tick. So I practiced that. And it doesn't matter whether you're in Zimbabwe, the Philippines, or Bangladesh, you have to demonstrate the same leadership skills.
Thank you, Ambassador. Fewer than 151 Black Americans, less than 7% of all U.S. ambassadors appointed, have served in this role. You are a part of a very small but deeply significant group of diplomats that have represented the Americans on the international stage. As one of the few Black U.S. ambassadors, what challenges or barriers have you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I faced the same challenges that any African-American professional faces. Whether you were in the military, working for IBM or Google, let's face it, we face the same challenges. Sometimes people don't think you're qualified. Sometimes people don't want to give you jobs, don't want to give you question your authority. And I think when I talk to my friends in the military or the private sector, You may be making more money in the private sector, but you face the same question. So I just think it's the challenge you face as an African American. But, my parents raised us to be twice as good. They raised us to have confidence that we could achieve anything. And we did. And I always felt that if somebody else could do it, I could do it. And I tried to copy what that person was doing. And I had to understand that you have to be part of that culture. Doesn't mean you're a sellout, but you have to do things that other people do to make them more comfortable with you. And for us, sometimes that is even more. But in doing that, I learned things. I didn't know how to swim until I joined the Foreign Service. It wasn't just languages. I didn't know how to play tennis. I didn't know how to play golf. Those were not things we learned in Harlem and Queens. But I ended up loving all of those things. And so those things opened my eyes and opened to other things. But yes, as an African American, you have to make white folks comfortable. It is unfortunate. It is what we have to pay as a minority. That doesn't mean you have to be an Uncle Tom or a seller, but they have to feel that you're part of the team and that you're comfortable. And I would say that in any organization. I'm on the board of nonprofits and for-profits organizations. I see that all the time. We've got to learn to play the game.
No, I think that's definitely a very interesting point given all of the different challenges that we're currently facing right now. I know that right now, since Trump came into office in on January 20th, lots of changes have been happening. And I think a lot of us young people who are in this space are really trying to navigate, our this us entering into our careers and having to deal with it. And a lot of people don't want to. And so, that's part of the inspiration behind NoirUnited because we wanted to create an organization that was, centering the voices and experiences of Black people. But I want to pivot here. Into a little bit more about your role, the role that you have on the Exim Import Bank. For the audience here, if you don't know, right now, Africa's population is projected to reach 2.5 billion by 2050, which is going to position the continent as a key driver of global growth. And, with recent cuts to USAID that have shaken the international development sector, many people are wondering, what the future of development on the continent will be and what the future of U.S.-Africa relations will be. And so given your role, on Exim Imports Bank's Africa Advisory Board, how do you see U.S.-Africa relations evolving in this changing landscape, especially when it comes to trade, investment, and the future of development on the continent?
Masseria, I'm not optimistic for the next 4 years. I am not. I never thought I would be able to say this about an American president or foreign policy. I hope I am wrong, but I was dismissed from the Exim Bank in January. Supposed to be term was supposed to last until August, but it's the president's right to have the people he or she wants, and we understand that. But my dismissal pales in comparison to what has happened, as you said. USAID being dismembered, which means no more PEPFAR aid, aid in terms of cholera and anthrax, all of these things. Typhoon, hurricane seasons coming to the world when USAID really leads in that. What is going to happen then? I am not optimistic. We saw Trump treated the South African president just the way he treated the Ukrainian president. He He's also practicing Elon Musk politics, trying to get having African leaders open for Starlink, pressuring them. None of this is good. We're worried about the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which will expire this fall. Will that be renewed? I don't know. Trump did try to have a free trade agreement with Kenya in his first administration. Democrats are against free trade, so it didn't go far with Biden. Actually, I think that would have been excellent for Kenya and the United States. I don't know if Trump will try that now. He has announced, his team has said he's going to have an African summit. So my question to the African leaders, what do they want to get out of that? Are they going to work to try to get AGOA renewed? What are they going to do with lobbying the new leadership of not only the Export-Import Bank, but the U.S. Trade Rep, because the tariffs are going to hurt Africa. But conversely, this is a time, even though at least until November of 26, the opposition will be out of power, to try to come up with ideas to support leaders on the continent, or countries in the continent, organizations. As I've said before, where's the Congressional Black Caucus on this? They are asleep. It breaks my heart. Congressman Payne, the late Congressman Payne, who really was a leader in Africa. Congressman Hastings was also, but where are we today in getting ready? So if the opposition is able to come in 26 or 28, one thing we have learned from Trump and his friends, the federal government can operate quickly. So you can come up with things that you want to do when you get in power in a quick manner, or in ways to blunt what Trump is doing should the opposition win in the midterms. And if he's willing to embarrass the president of one of the most important countries in Africa, if he's willing to embarrass Zelensky, who is a hero for what he is doing to maintain his country's freedom, how is he going to treat other African leaders when they come? I don't know, but I don't know why he would even invite them.
Yeah, that's a really telling insight. For us, one of the things that we've tried to do throughout our community and our network is raise awareness to many of these different challenges that are impacting Africa and the continent, I mean, in the diaspora. And for the audience who may not know, over the past 3 decades, there's been a conflict in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Mm-hmm.
This conflict has been fueled by regional instability as well as competition over natural resources, resulting in millions of lives lost and repeated humanitarian crisis. Similarly, in Sudan, it's entered into a third year of conflict with fighting between two military factions, displacing millions of people and destabilizing the region overall. Despite global efforts, these crises persist with often limited international media coverage. Why do you think that issues like this persist with little sustained attention? And why is it important for the African diaspora to be engaged on issues that are impacting the continent and the diaspora as a whole?
Nassim, unfortunately, most people could care less about Africa. And so we recognize that, we understand that. So that, again, is what you're doing to educate your friends, your constituents, your peers about the continent and what your views of the challenges that the hot spots, as you said, are the D-Rock, Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea. We've had the coups, repeated coups in West Africa. So all of these challenges are going on. Look, I very much supported Vice President Harris in her heroic campaign to be president, but the Biden administration didn't do a lot for Africa. Who are we kidding? Um, did not pay attention to it. So this is not just a new Trump thing. So it's going to take a long time. You can't gain influence and change people's mind or help Africa overnight. But what is your plan over 10 to 20 years? Sounds terrible when you're your age, but it really, that's what it's going to take. Because destabilization of the D-Rock started not only under colonization, but in America's support of Mobutu. This thing's, 70, 80 years ago. So you can't counter that overnight. You really can't. And the poor governance and the corruption that have resulted in Africa, which to me started with the West's destabilization of the continent, that also has to stop. And how you stop corruption is through good governance, independent judiciary, freedom of the press. Those are things key in countries that have good governance and good economics. And you're not going to do that overnight. But if you listen to people, work with them, and try and see how can you start to make small changes that can lead to larger changes. I like to have a drink as much as anybody else, but I am sick of when leaders come to town, all we have is a cocktail party and people BS about what they're going to do and nothing happens. So just start with something small where you can make any effect. And you can't do the entire continent. Look, what countries are you going to concentrate on? Who are you going to work on? Are you going to work in STEM, basic education, health? And it's going to be even tougher because the non-governmental organizations, they have been cut. Their funding has been cut. It was funny. A lot of my students used to say, we don't need foreign aid. Foreign assistance is terrible. This is terrible. It hasn't helped us. What are they saying now? What are they saying now? Okay. Correct foreign aid is needed, where you plan with these governments. How are you going to assist them? That is clearly needed and necessary. And I think we've learned that. But start small and have a vision and stick with it through the ebbs and flows. Trump may not be the last person like him.
No, I agree with the point about starting small. And I can admit I was one of those people who critiqued the development sector for what it was. And when you study global development, most of what you're studying is a critique to how the sector functions and how it can be better, how we can actually listen to the local communities rather than, impose certain ideals that we may want. And I think that's where a lot of the discussion comes from. And I think it's really interesting that your students, many of them are probably advocating for USAID because we do see the benefits of it. And just pulling the rug out like that is detrimental, given that there was a lot of reliance on it. And so, despite these changes, still a lot of young people across the diaspora are still eager to contribute to Africa's future and are looking for practical ways that they can do that, whether it be through education, business, or policy. And so, right now, given your background and your experience over the past 30 years, what do you see as the future of diplomacy for young people, and how can the African diaspora play a more central role in shaping international policy and reshaping the narrative around Africa?
Well, thank you for that. Clearly, USAID had things that they needed to do better. But I think, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I also think people didn't recognize how deep USAID's assistance was in so many ways. Because now the NGOs, they don't have the money because it would come from USAID. And USAID could marshal other countries, Western countries, to include Japan and Korea, to work together on projects. So that is hurt. I think one of the things that hurts the our communities the most is lack of funds. If you can't have raised funds, you can't do anything. So number one, your organization needs to raise money, and with specific projects, and then demonstrate its success. We cannot spend the next 100 years going hat in hand to people for handouts. We have the funds in the United States. Look at all these mega churches. Look at everybody driving Mercedes, getting their hair did, and all this stuff. Black History Month should not just be February. So we have the capacity. So how are you in NoirUnited going to raise funds so you can make a difference? Because if you cannot raise money over time, it won't make a difference. So the grants, there's not in the next 4 years, not going to be any grants from USAID, US government, probably state and local. So how are you going to raise money from corporate who don't know you and don't know your record, or our own community? But we can raise money. We can. Obama would use $10 checks, You can raise money. Look at all of those telethons we had for Kamala. But the thing that struck me, and this is not a criticism, when we had the black male, black female YouTube fundraisers that Roland Martin and others did, then I remember they had the white women for Kamala, and they raised like 20 times what we did. So, okay, we don't have that kind of money. That's okay. But we have enough to start to make differences. So decide what village you want to help, what town you want to help, because you don't have enough money to rebuild the city right now. But you do have enough money to make an effect. Or you want to have scholarships, whatever you want to do. There is an Asian American, Harry Lee. His father was my boss when I was in Kaduna, Nigeria 30 years ago. And Harry works with the Abasaro Network in Somalia. It started from nothing. And they have sent mostly women from Somalia to American universities, and most of those women have gone back to teach in Somalia. I mean, most times when you have somebody coming here, they stay here. But these people have gone back. He's lost money from USAID cuts too. But if Harry Lee can make it work in Somalia, what is our excuse? Now, he's been there over 12 years. And he's, started out that's a patriarchal society. But it took over time. He learned the language. He talked to parents. He convinced fathers to let their daughters go, tell them they'll get married when they come back. And they come back. They've come back, which is what you don't see. And I'm not saying you have to be Harry Lee. I'm not saying you have to have an Abasaro network. I'm just saying he has been able to do that in a successful way. So if you don't raise money, you will not be relevant.
Yeah, we definitely agree with you there. And that's been one of the biggest learning lessons that we've had to experience since growing our organization 5 years ago. Our first challenge was raising money to support African students who were fleeing the war in Ukraine, as we told you about before.
Yeah.
And through connecting with many different networks, we were able
Mm.
to not only raise money from our community, but also raise money with churches, with philanthropic organizations. And we also created a partnership with the Africa American Institute in order to fund scholarships to students who were coming to the US to continue their education. And one of the main things that we also told those students as well was to not only think about, maintaining your life here in the US, but because you've gone through all of these different experiences and you understand your country, where you come from, it's important for you to go back to your country in order to develop and to share that knowledge and information. So definitely a lot.
Yeah, when you told me about that, Nassim, I told my daughter about that. I was so proud of the work that you all have done. So you're already demonstrating how you can make differences in people's lives, and you know that you can go to churches. They're always looking for speakers. Father's Day, Mother's Day, there's always some speaker. Rotary clubs, all of these, our fraternities and sororities, the D9. There are, and it's not that they just don't know, but I think they're willing to go in their pocket and help specific programs. So I'm really pleased with you all for what you did.
No, I appreciate that. And thank you for your support and for sharing it to your daughter as well too. I'd like to do a shameless plug as well too. One of the other ways that we're trying to start small but engage young people in development work abroad is by going to the universities here in DC. So last year we partnered, or this past year we partnered with American Universities African Students Association to
Mm-hmm.
fundraise and build a well in Guinea to provide clean and safe
Mm-hmm.
water. And I am happy to share that we have built that well, and it is providing access to clean water in that village, Bofa. It's called Bofa, Guinea.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a village where my grandfather was born as well too. So we're looking to continue that, and
Mm-hmm.
they're going to continue supporting. And the other project that we're working on right now is renovating a school in Ghana. And so we're happy to drop those links in the chat for you all. If you're interested in learning more about how you can support that, please do donate and raise awareness about it, because the small funds that um, that you share will be going towards supporting someone's education or supporting their health. So, uh,
That is fantastic. It's easier to do that there than when I worked in India, where we didn't do wells because you'd have to do 4 or 5 because of the caste system. And that's the local culture that you can't overcome sometimes. You'd have to do other things. So good on you all. Look, I know our time is short. We only have about a half hour left. If there if there aren't, I'm happy to continue to answer the questions that you and Nassim had, but I don't want to not give one of the members chance to ask questions if they have.
You're jumping the ball here. We were just about to open up the floor to the
Okay, great.
audience. They know that we give an opportunity for people to ask questions as well.
Questions, not speeches.
Yes. So we can go ahead and do that.
Thank you. Fantastic, Nassim.
I think I see our first hand here, Natasha Brookshire.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you guys and to see that you're continuing with this NoirUnited. So yes, it's very refreshing. And as time goes by, it becomes more and more important. The question I have for your guest is, how from his experience in being in different countries in Africa. I was born in Haiti, so I'm Haitian American, and I know how sometimes foreign aid is actually used to like cripple the country so that, you know, a foreign aid can be in a country for decades. And then when it leaves, there's nothing left, right? The country falls apart or the system. So how is foreign aid, the reliance on foreign aid, how can that like, you know, prevent innovation within African countries?
Well, that's a challenge. I think that the US, every country does something well, and some things you don't do well. In terms of when USAID started, it was totally development, building universities, building bridges, building roads. That can be done, although we have very few American companies that are willing to work in Africa now, just because their business models have changed. There's more money in the Gulf and the Middle East. USAID morphed from that into health and agriculture. Tremendous success in health with PEPFAR, with anthrax. There could be more done. No, very limited success in terms of civil society, nation building, things like that did not work well. And there's nothing that USAID does not impose, well, did not impose. What you did is you worked with the president and the minister of those countries and what they wanted to do. The challenge was, if for different and remember, USAID in a local country has very few discretionary funds. It's what the US Congress decides how money is going to be spent. The challenge was, if you get a different USAID administrator, which you get every 2 or 4 years, depending on the administration, that person's development priorities can change overnight. And now this country who say has been working on education has this shift to water. And in 2 years, you just can't do all of that. And they also say, oh my God, well, now they're interested in art. So all of the local agencies, we work through local partners in the country. So the local folks in Guinea say, oh my God, we were doing water. Now we got to do art. Oh my God, let's get to that. And you can't do it in 2 years and it all falls apart. So if we ever are able to get an assistance program back together, one, we have to make a case to the American people for how important it is, but also the benefits to America as well as the local nations. But we have to stay focused on what we can do. Development that's what you see the Chinese doing, some places well and some places poorly, in developing in terms of infrastructure. In the early 60s, we did agriculture. Not only did we build universities, we brought a lot of Africans here to get bachelor's, master's, PhD degrees. And most of those folks did go back in those days. When Zimbabwe got independence, over 4,000 Zimbabweans who had been educated in America went home. So stick to what we do well in partnership with those countries, and don't get off on tangents that also are hard to sustain, and the countries can't do them and the American people won't support them, would be my admonishment. But that's just USAID. Remember, the Department of Agriculture is the leading food aid, and that needs to continue.
Thank you.
Next, I see Anne Jean-Baptiste.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ambassador Thomas, for your talk today. So I actually worked at USAID and I also got laid off in January in the Global Health Bureau. I appreciate you being honest about how bad the outlook is. I know a lot of people choose to be a little bit more optimistic, but honestly, like taking a very real approach to it and being clear that we're in a bad place right now and things may continue to be bad for a while feels like validating in a way. I wonder if you can share more, at least in the Global Health Bureau, a big aspect, a big goal we had was localization. So USAID was actually doing a lot of efforts to, kind of balance that, like that power imbalance and actually build up the capacity of a lot of local partners. We had a foreign service national cohort come from like countries all across Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, and they were basically there to, knowledge exchange and also build up their leadership skills in whatever respective um, parts of USA that they were working in. So I found it interesting that all this framing about it being a waste of time, and even the perspective that USAID and organizations like it kind of put countries in a dependency cycle when there were very clear progress being made, even despite all the barriers and hurdles that you've mentioned. So I don't know. I think it's still very devastating to me. I had dreams of being a foreign service officer, and I'm just, I'll see what happens in the next few years and find ways to continue the work, like you said. But I really appreciated hearing from you.
Well, Anjean, I'm so sorry. This is inexcusable what Trump has done. And as I said, I'm even angry at the lack of reaction among our own people. But this is time for USAID and people in the foreign assistance community to look in the mirror and say, what did we do well and what did we not do well? You have to do that. And also, there are limits by the U.S. government on how much USAID could tell the American people. That, in a new administration, that needs to be changed so people really can learn, because even people who are interested in foreign policy just don't know how it works. Yes, you do have to have local partners. We don't impose, no matter what people say. Now, aid is going to be left to the U.S. military, who has a huge civil affairs budget. They do some very good work in terms of veterinary, helping people with cattle, helping people with eye operations, things like that. But they're usually only there for a very short time. And the Bureau of Humanitarian Affairs is going away. So our ability to respond to crises is going to be gone. But I think once we get over the sadness and the anger, Angie, look self in the face and say, okay, see what I did not like with the way PEPFAR was set up, despite its success. AID and Center for Disease Control had to compete in each country for the same pot of money, which was silly. And it made them really dislike each other. And then after they worked in Zimbabwe, they would go to Zambia or they would go to Tanzania, and they had competed and won and lost, and they had developed personal animosities, which was silly. So that putting each other at their throats led to inefficiencies. And that needs to be stopped. And that was not any president's fault. That was USAID and CDC not being able to work together. People would come to me with projects, and sometimes I had to play Solomon or King David, and I'm not a development professional. That makes no sense. So that needs to be changed in the future. It's about helping people and saving lives, not egos.
No, thank you for that. I appreciate that comment, as I'm sure everyone else does as well too. The next person I see is Guy James.
How you doing, sir? Hope you're doing well.
I am. I'm blessed. I hope you are too.
I'm blessed as well. So my question was about are people being involved in politics in the sense that I know a lot of times there's a lot of hoopla around the presidential election, but there are other important elections and ways that local and state government affect how things turn out in federal government. With a lot of the issues that you've mentioned, and maybe some that are in the back of your mind that you haven't mentioned, what are some ways that we could be involved in our local governments that could affect things on a grand scale?
Guy, thank you for that. If you look at Georgia and North Carolina, um, Stacey Abrams in Georgia and North Carolina in terms of Carolina for All or different counties, Guilford County for All, they have decided that local politics leads to long-term power. So they have decided they register voters, which is arduous if you've never tried to register voters. Then they try to run slates of candidates. Either they endorse incumbents, and I'm talking about the county clerk, the county registrar, the director of deeds. All of these people have power in local communities because they're going to decide whether our community gets the remains of food desert. What happens to where's the new school going to be? Is it going to be a magnet school? Is it going to be a charter school? All of those things. The city council. Usually there's one person of color or two persons of color on the city council. They're there for 50 years. Some do well, some don't. But you know how we feel about Auntie who's been there. We can't let her go. So I really think you can look at North Carolina and you can look at Georgia. There may be others. I just don't. I know these, and see how they have decided to long-term, 1 decade, 2 decades of electing local officials, starting with people at your age, so that by the time you're 40 or 45, you can run for Congress if you want. You can run for governor if you want. You can run for Senate, or you can stay as property deeds. But there is so much power in that, right? The Secretary of State and states determines the voter rolls. We see what happens to us in terms of IDs and these things. So local politics, yeah, that really is the key to so much that goes on in America. You have to give the Republicans credit. For the last 40 years, they've been saying government employees are lazy, school teachers are overpaid, foreign aid is a waste. And people believe it now, even if it's not true. And they also decided with organizations like the Federalist Society, they're going to get their judges. It took them 20, 30 years, but they got the Supreme Court that way. We could do that, but it's just going to take time.
All very good points. I think the next person I see here is Mel Foot.
So,
Ambassador, how are you, sir?
I am fine. I'm glad they have an OG to work with them.
I try to work with them, but they play funky music and all that. I have to kind of the hairstyle anyway. I really have enjoyed your discussion, and I think you hit on a lot of the great points that needed to be said. I always felt that the biggest problem facing U.S. and Africa is that most Americans are uninformed, underinformed, or misinformed about Africa. If you ask the average person how many countries in Africa, wow, you might, what number you're going to hear is incredible. Or if you ask them anything about Africa, really. And so even among African Americans, my organization, as you know, has been focused on trying to change this, and the resources has always been the challenge. I've been involved in Africa for almost 50 years now. And, some of the places you talked about, Somalia, I spent time there, Ethiopia, Eritrea. My daughter is also in the Foreign Service. She's in the USAID in Jamaica, and she's losing her job next month. So, we certainly can relate to a lot of things that you're saying. My question is, I got started by the Peace Corps. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Eritrea and Ethiopia. My daughter followed me up. She went to Peace Corps in Benin. She got evacuated through COVID, but she spent about almost 2 years in Benin prior to joining USAID. What do you think about the Peace Corps? I think Peace Corps might also be in the bullseye of Trump. And for me, it was the way I got started. I learned my languages. I learned cross culture. I got to Africa. When I first went to Africa, my father told me I'm going to be eaten by a lion. And so I went to Africa really frightened that I better look out for them lions when I get to that airport. And so, we were totally uninformed about Africa. All I knew was Tarzan. And I thought Tarzan would be at that airport when I arrived. But I give myself an A for courage. But what do you think about the Peace Corps? I think as an entree to get started in some of these countries, to me, that's how you get started.
I think Peace Corps is fantastic. Obviously, when I was in the Philippines, we had one of the largest Peace Corps cohorts in the world. Same thing previously in India. We helped bring Peace Corps back to Zimbabwe and to Bangladesh. It's fantastic. Convincing people to join is difficult. That is a challenge. And once they join, usually fewer than 45 to 50% stay there 2 years. No matter how much they say they want to rough it, they want the microwave, they need the internet, all of these things. And this is across all demographics, as you know. You got a huge dropout rate. But I think, as you know, Alonzo Fogum and Aaron Williams, really close friends of mine. I've seen so much work that the Peace Corps does. I never forget, when I was in Zimbabwe the first time in '89 and '92, the director of UNDP was a Senegalese. And he told me that the reason he went to Dartmouth is because this kid used to wear a raggedy shirt that said Dartmouth every day, and he was a Peace Corps volunteer. And he was nice to him. So that's why he applied. So you can have tremendous influence. And what I loved about what the old Peace Corps that you were in, used to be given a small amount of money to start businesses. And in the Philippines, they started Hobbit House, which is a restaurant bar for small people. That they have 3 of them. The people own them. That's where Alan Pineda from Journey got his start. They had factories for blind people, factories for deaf people, all started by what we call PCVs. So if we're able to hold on or reconstitute Peace Corps, thinking about giving Peace Corps volunteers small funds to start businesses, because frankly, most of them have to teach English. In a lot of places, and this included the Philippines and Bangladesh, the local school system is corrupt. There may not be any students, or the principals paying off people to be teachers who aren't, or teachers give the principal money. This is in the Philippines, and they go off on cruise ships. And there was a lot of local corruption, and indomitable Peace Corps volunteers would have to teach at night and do all of that stuff. So you face those local challenges. But I think Peace Corps was intended to benefit the American volunteers. It has. I hope Reagan learned. I wasn't a fan of Ronald Reagan, but he learned how valuable the Peace Corps could be. And but I'm not so sure Trump will. I think we've got time. I've got time for one more question. I'm very sorry. I'm in town, as Mel may know, for a funeral, Ambassador Ruth Davis's funeral. She was the doyen of African Americans in the Foreign Service, and she was Director General. She's only ambassador to one country in Benin in Africa, but she quietly and sometimes loudly mentored all of us and got us to do better. And when we had a fellowship program that had no money, she and Ambassador Brazil came to me when I was Dr. Rice's aide and said, we need $1 million for this program. And I went into Condi and said, we need $1 million for this program to bring diversity into the Foreign Service. And she said, you got it, right then. And we were able to start the Wrangell. It was named after Charles Wrangell, who just died the other day. And we were able to start that at Howard University. And the key was not only were we able to give scholarships to students' master's degrees. They got 5 years in the Foreign Service. Rangel was smart. The fee for running that 9% went to Howard University. So they got a cut of it. You got to think about these things. I am sorry. I've got 2 minutes left. I've got to go to this event to honor folks who are getting together, but I can take one quick question and run.
So we'll hand the last question off to Akuna.
Hello. I really enjoyed your talk today. I'm a college student. I go to University of Maryland College Park, and the past year or so, I've been really interested in public health back home or in Africa. And NoirUnited has definitely been a avenue where I've definitely grown that interest. A question that I really had is, when I'm talking to other students on campus, I hear that they don't often want to go back home or they don't often want to do public health in Africa. Like I hear a lot of emphasis on other continents, which is fine and great, but I always see like a lack of interest or wanting to go back and just deal with like corruption and all that stuff. And I really wanted to ask you, how can college students be more interested in these public health programs that influence like the cultural exchange and this long-term sustainability in African communities? Because I'm really trying to sell Africa and how it can be very like fun and just enriching. But a lot of students are just like, I don't want to go, yeah.
Well, you're never going to get everybody, and don't let that discourage you. You're probably always going to get a minority of people, but it's getting good people. And I don't have to tell you how to suck it. You know that internships overseas, to summer internships, junior year abroad or sophomore year abroad in Africa, can be life-changing. Yale School of Public Health has been working with NGOs in Sudan using AI to prevent attacks on people in villages. There's a lot of ways you can bring AI in good ways through public health to places on the continent. But don't let the naysayers get you down. Just do what you have to do. I've really got to run now, but I'm going to tell you, Akuna, my good friend Akuna Cook, who she started Next Narrative Africa from nothing. And she was a Foreign Service officer. She was a Howard graduate, a Yale graduate, like Nassim. And she's raised $40 million. $40 million for storytelling and entertainment from the continent. So don't let anybody can tell you can't do it. Look up Akuna Cook and Next Narrative Africa. Don't let her be the only successful Akuna.
Yeah.
But
Thank you.
I got to run. God bless and thanks for having me. I'd be happy to do it again or recommend some other friends. Okay.
Thank you, Ambassador Thomas.
Bye-bye.
So, Ms. Sarah, you can go ahead and close us out.
All right. Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining. I hope this was a informative and insightful conversation that you all listen into. As you know, it's not every day that we get to hear good advice from a former ambassador, an African American ambassador at that. And so I just want to thank Ambassador Thomas, and I want to thank everyone who joined the call. All of our members as well. Please do check the group chat. GDaddy has shared links to our membership forum for you all to stay up to date on our events and activities. And also the link to our website as well too. And so thank you all again. I see some of our board members are here. Thank you, Bio, Sharana, for joining. And I would love to see you all at some of our future events. And thank you all again.
Yes. And one more thing before we hop off, we want to thank you, Jideti, for making the connection for us today for our amazing speaker. And we look forward to continue working with you in the future.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you very much. This was great.